And so far, what we've done is we've been able to hide the mouse cursor, we've made our own custom cursor, and we've also determined the position of the mouse on our Pygame window. Okay, so today what we're going to do is learn how to use the buttons on the mouse. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to re-enable my default cursor. So I'm going to set this back to visible. And I'm also going to just get rid of my crosshairs for now. So you can see we're back to our normal window with just our mouse cursor. So what I want to do is I want to not just get the position of the mouse, I also want to get the state of the mouse buttons. And the way we're going to do that is very similar. We're going to go, I'm going to call it mouse butt for buttons, and pygame.mouse.getPressed_pressed. This is the code that gets the state of your mouse buttons. And now let's make some text again. So mouse button text equals text.render, and we're going to turn it into a string, and we're going to say mouse buttons true, and we're going to call this black as well. There we go. And then we also want to actually draw it to the screen. Window.blit mouse button text, and we're going to draw that at 0. Now I'm going to draw it below the position of where the cursor is. Okay, so in the top left corner we've got our cursor's position, the XY for our mouse position, and I want to draw it a little bit below that. And since my text is 25, a size 25, I'm going to draw this at 0, 26. So right below it. And if we run this, you can see I've got my mouse button states right here underneath. Now when I click with my left click, you can see the first one turns into a 1, and I'm holding down that left click and I let go. And if I click with my right click, you can see it's actually not, I would have expected it to be this one, but it's not that one. It's the third one. Okay, and now if I click with my middle mouse button, you can see it very, very briefly turns this one on right here. So all we're going to worry about right now is we're going to worry about this one and this one. So this is going to be my left click, and this one's going to be my right click. So again, I left click, turns this to a 1, and if I right click, it's turning this one right over here to a 1. Okay, and now this is mouse button at index 0. So this is mouse button 0, mouse button 1, and mouse button 2. And that'll make more sense once we get into lists and things like that later. Okay, so we've got our mouse button, and we can also get mouse button 0, and that's my left click. So I'm going to make a variable called left click, and that's mouse button 0. That's the thing on the far left. And my right click on my mouse, I'm going to say mouse button, oops, not 1, sorry, 2. Okay, so there we go. I've got a left click variable now, which is my mouse button 0, the first thing in that list of mouse buttons. And so whenever I'm going to run this program again, whenever I left click, then mouse button 0 takes on the value of 1. And then right after that, you can see that left click is mouse button 0, so my left click takes on the value of 1. Now the reason I want to do that is we would rather just use that information, like we want to do something when we left click, for example. So for example, we could say, all right, when I left click, let's draw something at that position. So we can say pygame.draw.circle. I want to draw it in the window, and let's make it a red circle. And where do we want to draw it? We want to draw it where our mouse is. So mouse position. And what's our radius? Well, let's give it a radius of 20, and let's have it filled in. And what we want to say is, let's draw this circle whenever we left click. So we can say if, now we can do this, if left click equals 1, then draw the circle where our mouse is. Let's run that. Now, as soon as I'm left clicking, you can see it says left click. Then I'm drawing a circle where my mouse is, and as soon as I let go of my left click, it disappears. So it's only drawing it when I left click, just like that. Now, a slightly different way of saying this is we can just say if left click. That means if left click is not equal to 0. So if left click is just as good. So, and this reads really nice, right? It just, if you left click. Okay, you don't need to comment this now because we picked really good variable names. So if we left click, then draw a red circle where the mouse is, and then we could say LF right click. Then let's draw a circle at the mouse. Except instead of red, let's make it blue. So if I run this again, if I left click, I've got a red circle. If I right click, I've got a blue circle. Okay, now what do you think is going to happen if I left and right click at the same time? Okay, so make your guess. Now here I go, I'm going to left and right click at the same time. Yep, it's just drawing a red circle. And why is that? Because in this if statement, what happens is it's going to do the first one that becomes true. So I am left clicking. I'm left clicking and right clicking, but I'm left clicking. So it's going to do this one, and it's going to skip over all of the other if statements in this block. Now, if I wanted it to try to do both, if I changed this to just an if, now these are totally separate if blocks. So if I'm left clicking, it's going to draw this. And if I'm right clicking, then it's going to draw that one too. So if I run it now and I left and right click, you can see it's got a blue circle. Why? Because it's drawing the blue circle over top of the red circle every single time. Okay, so it is drawing the red circle, but then right afterwards it's drawing the blue circle right over top. So there's just some logic that you want to take into consideration for these things.